Ready to go?
Ready to
There you
go.
go.
Let's get going. All right. So today, let's see, what do we do? So, well, actually, I should kick it back. Welcome to Flâneurs, everybody. So I've been going back and forth with a group on LinkedIn talking about this concept of Agile coaching and is there such a thing as an Agile coach, or even is there such a thing as Agile? And it's been a really interesting debate. It's getting my juices going, and sometimes I have to step back from it because I'm just going to call people names at some point. I know that's going to happen. I think I've refrained, but it is interesting because there are folks who they say things. I don't know, and I used to do this a lot, so I pick up on it now. Where they'll say something that they think they're debating and they think they're being totally neutral, but really they're being super insulting. Like, oh well, you're just not ready to have an academic debate. Well, says who? Like, why are we talking about what I am or am not ready to do as a person? Like, shouldn't we be talking about the topic here? And now you're coming after me.
Yeah, just
I know
debate.
they
Just
don't.
think, don't you think?
Yeah,
Just like, well, just say. I had someone. Just sorry, this might go off on a bit of a
do
tangent.
it.
But I had
Yeah.
someone recently, very similar, on a thing on LinkedIn, and this person, and it's happened to me before actually. This person said, because they didn't agree with what I'd said, and I didn't agree with what they said, and I think that's fine. That's absolutely okay. He said, so this person said, "Oh, okay, Matt, you're right. Um, other SMEs, other subject matter experts are wrong. So if you're all right with that, then fine." And I was thinking, like, actually, they didn't even say other SMEs. They just said you're telling SMEs that they're wrong. And I was like, for me, it was. I think I could call myself an expert in this thing. I think I could. So I feel like you're assuming I'm not and you are, but I've not said you're not and I'm not. So I think we both are. And I think actually, like if you think about Kinevin, which I do like about the complexity thing, when you think about that, sort of like those different domains, in the complicated domain, it even talks about experts will disagree. So I think it's essential that we as experts disagree. And we
100%.
have people on LinkedIn, don't we, saying like, "Oh, you said no to me, so you and I'm an SME, so you just deny SMEs their what they know." It's like, no, I haven't done that at all. Actually, I'm fishing for a debate,
Yeah.
but you just shut it down, so now I can't debate it. Did you get that sort of thing?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it is sort of like that. It is sort of in that vein of like going after, like for example, I've said about this debate about agile coaching. I've said to me, debating whether agile coach as a phrase has meaning and what it means is like that's a pedantic thing. Like it's very academic, and I find the people who care most deeply about what it means are the people who call themselves that. The people writing the checks hiring, they're like, I need an agile coach. Now, I agree that in their minds, what they're looking for is it could be a different thing among all the people looking, and the people who call themselves that, they could all be doing different things.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But sitting around and trying to define it, I'm like, but what is that? Anyway, that's getting into the substance of it. But what is that? What is that doing for anybody? Like, who's winning when we win this argument? And even if we come to a definition, right? The point I've made is anyway. So I've said that, and the retort is like, oh well, the people who say it's pedantic, it's just transference, and they're just not up for a debate, and they're trying to skirt the issue. It's like, no, I'm not. I just don't think. I think that's the wrong issue. Like, yes, we could
Yeah.
sit until the cows come home. We can debate, and actually, we've done like 4 or 5 episodes of 2-hour long conversations debating with multiple people what this stuff means. No one's going to win. Newsflash, no one's going to win.
Yeah.
And I pointed out, right, like you look at the word, I'm not sure if this is also true in the UK, but at least in the US, the Oxford English Dictionary has defined literally to mean its antonym. So literally can mean the actual. I'm saying, if I say I literally skipped down the street, could mean I actually sat there and skipped.
Yeah.
Or it could mean figuratively, which is the antonym of literally.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Because that's the usage
we've
of it.
now That's the usage. So we've decided that literally means is antonym. So I'm like, so if we
Can I
have
just point
English
out though,
words,
Dan? Can I
yeah,
just point out that if you were skipping, you would literally not be sitting. So you just said sit there, skip it. Yeah, no, that wouldn't happen. And also,
yeah,
can I point out at what point through this intro are you going to start the timer?
yeah. Good point. I should start it. And we're
We're like what,
past an
5 minutes in or
intro.
something.
Yeah, and we're past sort of past an intro because I've sort of gotten into stuff, but I'm like, because we just sort of got into it. Um, I'll start it. So yeah, so I guess the one of the things that have come up is okay. So should agile coaching be more of a profession, meaning that we have standards and all these things like doctors or lawyers, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so I'll start that my starting point, right, is that I said absolutely not. Um,
But also,
and
but
oh, good.
also, weren't you saying that like something was one person was saying like that it doesn't exist? Or
Yeah, there are
is it
people
that
who
they were
say,
saying
yeah,
it
it
doesn't
doesn't
exist because
exist.
it's not a profession?
Uh, it, so it's a interesting nuanced argument because when they're saying there's no such thing as an agile coach, they're saying that because it currently has no meaning. Because when people are asking for an agile coach, they're asking for different things, and the people who call themselves agile coach do different things. So there is no
Yeah.
such thing as an agile coach because
Yeah.
if I say agile coach, what does it mean? Well, it's
Yeah.
this nebulous thing that sort of is whatever you want it to be in the context is the argument. And I'm not doing it 100% justice, but that's the short version.
Can I?
Right.
Right. This has just made me think of something, which might
Yeah.
be odd. But I've been watching. Have any of you seen Atlanta? So it's on Disney Plus here.
Oh yeah, Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's what's it
hit
called?
series.
It's Donald Glover,
Yep.
and it's absolutely blinding. Me and my son watch it. It's absolutely brilliant. Anyway, I've just got to a point where there's a character called Darius who's amazing. And we're like sort of halfway through all of the seasons in the middle, and they're in London, and he's asked someone asked him what he wanted to eat, and he said, "This is going to be weird, jollof rice."
Oh wow.
So I was thinking, and this again, this might be me presuming something, but what I know about jollof, and Sanjay, you can probably set me straight on this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's this thing that like lots of African nations have a different view on what jollof is.
West African mostly. Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
West African? Right.
Yeah.
What is
Um,
jollof?
it's like a
So
rice dish with
and
tomatoes
it's
and
Oh,
so
yeah,
on.
okay.
it's a
Yeah.
tomato-based rice dish that's kind of steamed, right? With
Yeah.
usually with fish or meat or whatever. But that's the thing. It's steamed rice that's turned red because of the tomato-based sauce that you
Yeah.
steam it with. And so this has been an age-old debate that's taken on an even further bigger stage with social media,
Yeah.
where there's like tongue-in-cheek competition, between people from mainly Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal, which are the really three that are known for
Yes.
having this as like a main staple dish in their
Yeah.
sort of cuisine. But the funny thing, and I love the analogy you played between agile coaching and this, because if you look at, at the heart of it, there are cultural similarities between all three countries and a lot of the countries in that region. Those borders that define the different countries as we see them today have been, if you look at them, they're, borders that are defined by rivers or by mountains or whatever, and that the colonial powers that be at the time
Yeah.
came and
Yeah.
sort of, put out there after World War I, I think it was.
Yeah.
Forgive me, all those history buffs, correct me in the comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are definitely cultural similarities, strong ones that cut across those borders, right? And cooking food is usually a strong, if you go to Southeast Asia, same thing. And so the funny thing is that there's this, so everyone has their own, obviously, sort of patriotic view on my jollof rice is the best because, yeah, whatever. And so you're repping Nigeria or Ghana or Senegal. And so what happens is, though, however, there's more Nigerians than Senegalese. So they're going to obviously drown that out somehow, right? Because there's more of them on platforms talking about this. and Ghanaians is, kind of similar to Senegal. But Jollof actually means Senegal. So their Jollof is part
Was
of
that right?
an empire in Senegal. So the mere fact that
I didn't know that. Yeah.
yeah, you should do some research. So
It's
so
like
that
a
kind of,
mic drop.
yeah. So
Senegal wins.
Yeah.
right, but each country does and that's when the subjective nature of cooking. Dan, you know this. A good cook is a good cook. So whether you're a good cook from Nigeria, Senegal, or Ghana, you're going to obviously inspire yourself from what's done a little bit everywhere, or what your grandmother or grandparents or your auntie passed on to you. And you're going to take that and make it better or whatever. So there's great people and great chefs in Ghana or Nigeria that are cooking in Nigeria or in London or wherever in the diaspora, similar to Senegalese ones that make great jollof rice.
Yeah.
But the original one I feel is the one that started, the fish-based red jollof rice, which is the name of the old empire, which is, based in Senegal. So anyway,
And
that
you're
was a
naturally
long,
predisposed to saying that's jollof rice. But
yeah,
like we're saying, I mean, this is like agile coaching.
yeah,
It's like the thing is, like, say, well, clearly I'm not from Africa, right? I might, you said like that diaspora, I might go into a Ghanaian or a Senegalese or a Nigerian restaurant, look for my jollof rice, and that might be absolutely superb.
yeah,
And I might go, that's jollof rice. And then actually next week I might wander into, if I was in a Senegalese restaurant, I might wander into a Ghanaian restaurant
right,
and go, can I have the jollof rice? I can see it on the menu. Can I have the jollof rice? Eat that, see it's different, but go, yum. And I
yeah,
think that's like agile coaching,
yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah,
It
yeah,
does the trick. And
yeah,
there is lots of it. And I sort of
true,
feel like the world's better for having lots of different versions of that because because it is there to help you deal with lots of different versions of the world. It's
yeah,
there to help you deal with
Yeah.
complexity.
yeah.
And then putting, I worry when people say about putting rules around it.
I agree. I agree. What I would say though, and I'm with you totally on board with the fact that oftentimes we get lost, everything gets lost in translation as far as because whether it be agile coaching, whatever, those are all means to an end. And that
Yeah.
means is basically finding different ways, approaches, techniques, um, stances, if you will, to
Yeah.
help unpack a problem, to help move a person or a group of people to a better state than they were before, whether that be organizational, technical, building software, building products, whatever. So um, what happens is, though, I think Agile has, it's almost like what social media kind of did with tech, right? It was such an amplifier in terms of even just from an opportunity standpoint. You just look at just that job title itself, like how many people have gravitated towards that because it speaks to helping people. It speaks to something that gives people purpose. And it speaks to helping people with the loads of problems that we see in not only in tech, but just overall. And that sort of lack of barriers to entry to that sort of profession or that, I don't want to even want to call that circle, right? Is has been great. But usually what happens, and you can see this on LinkedIn, all the viewers, you can just run around, go and see on type Agile Coaching or type Agile Coaching in LinkedIn. What you'll see is you'll start to see people sort of amassing what other professions have, such as doctors, right? Other fields of professions have, if you're a doctor, you have to go to school for 7 years. You have to earn your doctorate. You have to do a thesis. You have to do all these different things. And then you get that stamp, right? Same thing with the lawyer. You got to pass the bar exam or whatever exam in whatever country. So with us, you don't really have that. You have, and most of the people who have jumped into Agile Coaching have some way, shape, or form have had years of experience. Most of them, the caricatures, okay, did IT in some way, shape, or form, or marketing, right? You saw years of failure, and then, right, you wanted to try to help people based on this new movement, right? This philosophy that came about. Okay, you went around, read a couple of books, did a couple of DIY, took a couple of certifications, right? PSM's product ownership or whatever, what have you of the lot, right? Or project management based, whatever. Now product, right? And so that has now stamped along, hopefully with your experience and your, helping organizations or teams, that's how you add to your sort of cachet, if you will. So really, and if you look at France, that's been my story. Like there's been a tremendous wave of people who jumped into that have gone from testers to product owners to scrum masters to lead techs, but have seen agile coaching as sort of the highest paid,
Right.
a
Yeah.
well-paid job, right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes sort of something you reach for, and that you have to sort of earn a certain level of gravitas and proof through your certifications or the work that you do, et cetera, to show what you're worth as an agile coach, right? And I feel like that has created a mess a little bit. It's just a human element of all professions. So that's where I feel like it's healthy, I think, to have a discussion and to have variety, right? Because groupthink is, I think, the worst thing that could happen to us. Because again, if it's a means to an end, there's 1,000 ways to do different things, right? So depending on context, your comfort level, whatever. So, but I think that we should not have groupthink around trying to get everybody to think one way or another way, et cetera. Like that's what makes, I think this profession, what we do, so much fun. But I do think there should be your ability to be impactful, and that's something that's touching our profession right now, is like, how do you show a return on investment of the work that you did? How have you influenced, impacted, since you've arrived and since you're 6 months later, a year later, how is what you're doing on a day-to-day basis helping bring about change, whether it's visible, invisible, or not. So I say that to say there should be a discussion around how to help people move people into a state where they feel comfortable, just presenting who they are and how they can help bring about being able to articulate that. That's, yes.
Well, are you saying like you would welcome that professionalism, that not professionalism, but that it was a profession, that there were standards that you had to meet before you could so you were validated that you could take people on this journey, and is it that you're saying you think there would be fewer problems if people had to reach a certain level and then were rubber stamped and then were let loose?
In a perfect world, but unfortunately, we know that bias creates the fact that, when you create those type of guardrails, then you have these gatekeepers, and gatekeepers are either driven by people or systems, which are, profit-based most of the time, right? And so it's like, it's like when you become, I don't know, when you become a sensei, martial arts, at some point, what determines your ability to call yourself a sensei? You go through different levels or belts or whatever. And sometimes we have the shuari, right? And actually, sometimes we have to talk about or the different levels of belts in other cases. But, what is the body? What would be the body? Because this is a worldwide phenomenon, right? Agile, agility. What would be that body that would be able to objectively say, okay, you've gone from yellow to green belt. Right? Without it being this sort of money-making standard carrier like all these other PMI, ITIL have all kind of become. And then so the validity of who you are, right? Or the value of yourself as a professional, as a coach or whatever, becomes those certifications. And that's the sort of the trap with setting standards, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and back when we were talking about food, right? The quote that comes to mind is the trope, I guess. What's the best wine? The best wine is the one that you like to drink, right? Yeah. And actually they've had these things where, and by the way, before I forget, I want to comment for those who are just listening that you're missing out on Sanjiri. Like Sanjiri looks super styling today. He's got glasses. You're missing that.
That I never wear. I'm supposed to be wearing, but I never wear. So today,
you're rocking that look.
I've seen you with these before. It looks great. So you've got they've done these things where they do these. I think wasn't there a Netflix about this where they bring these master sommeliers together and they have them taste test stuff, and they end up the wine that they say is the best is the cheap crap wine, and that's the wine that they all blind taste test. We're like, this is the best wine, and it's like the $5 bottle. And so like the best wine is the wine that you like to drink. And so when it comes to this, I also think about I think about therapy, right? So you can get licensed as a therapist, but if I go to a licensed therapist, does that mean they're going to be able to help me? No. Like I've heard and I've experienced that finding a good therapist is a lot like dating, right? You have to find the one that matches with you. So maybe the therapist that works for me isn't going to work for Sanjiri or Matt, but that therapist works for me. Well, can't the same be true of Agile Coach? So just because I like maybe my style works
Yep.
really well for one client and they would hate Matt.
Mhm.
And then at another client, they love Matt and they hate me. Like, right? I mean, this is entirely possible. And
In
it's
the
based
span
on
of a
what they
week.
need.
In the span of a
Yeah.
week, I've seen it happen too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And their needs can change. And the when you're helping people, people are messy. And the problems that they're dealing with are messy, right? We talk about the complexity. And so you're going to need different things. And where I look at it is I say, okay, because people keep wanting to go back to even today, somebody was like, well, but this isn't what Agile coaching started at. I'm like, and so the
It was supposed
whole
to evolve, yeah.
philosophy and ethos of agility is adapting to change and embracing change and adapting to circumstances. So wouldn't we expect that agile coaches who are doing coaching and helping others do it are going to change what the definition of agile coach means because they're going to find better ways to do agile coaching? And so that means the bounds are, I agree that the bounds are creeping. So, and that there are people who are getting into fields that are damn near therapy. They shouldn't, in my opinion, right? And I don't have to be right about this, but my opinion is should stay away from therapy. That is not your job. But therapy and coaching are very close if you talk about professional coaching, as some people define it, right? They're very, very close. The way it's been distinguished to me is that therapy is about repairing your past and coaching is about exploring your future. So as long as we aren't going into exploring your past, I'm okay with it. But like,
Which is sometimes
I
very
think
tough.
that there's different. What's that?
Which is sometimes very tough because even when you don't ask for it as a coach, it's something that's brought onto you. And then, so how do you deal with that, right? So
100%. Yeah. And how do
yeah.
you deal with that?
Yeah.
And then there's the argument, oh, well, so you're helping people through change. Well, we already have change managers. That's already a profession. We already have change management. There's a whole discipline. So I kind of view it as like you have a doctor, you have a general doctor, but then you've also got an orthopedic surgeon, you've got an internist, you've got OBGYN, you've got urologist, you've got, proctologist, you've got all the ologists, right? There's all these different, there's neurologists, there's all these different specialties. And so I think agile coaching, generally, there's a whole bunch of things in that an organization needs. So some of it's change management, and some of it's probably project management. There's some people dynamics and system. There's all these different things. And I think you're going to find that there will be coaching has the breadth, and then people will have depth. I like Kent Beck's. I always throw to Kent Beck on this one because I loved his analogy. He calls people paint drip people. Like we talk about T-shaped, his analogy is paint drip. And he says, imagine you load up a paintbrush and you draw it across a canvas and there's drip. Some of them go deep, some of them are short. He says, over time, as you go through life, and this has been my experience, like I'll encounter a subject and it'll really interest me and I'll go deep on it. Others don't really interest me that much. I go pretty shallow. So I have a mixture of like some things deep, some things shallow. I'm a particular paint drip drawn line with depths and shallows all over the place.
Yeah.
I fit somewhere, not everywhere. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What you've just said there makes me also then think, I don't know what it was specifically you said, but it did make me think about when I talk, well, just when I talk about the problems that I'm faced or, when I'm flanneing, as I do, when I talk about the problems that I'm witnessing and things like that, what I'll often put out on social media that like, I talk about data a lot and I talk about the scientific method a lot. I talk about this, that, and the other, but I absolutely talk about the arts, about creativity. And I don't know, maybe this is my ignorance, but I don't think being an artist is a profession. I mean, I know there are things like in the UK, there's like the Royal Society of Arts, and you can join that and you become a fellow or whatever you become, and you can get letters after your name and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's just being a part of a gang. But it feels like, like actually, do we want an agile coach to be like a lawyer, or do we want an agile coach to be like an artist? Which makes me think about one of the things that I really love and I read about a lot. It's like, have you heard of like Donella Meadows? She's like a system. She was a systems thinker. She's no longer with us, I don't think. But she has this thing about dancing with systems, and I think that's what we do. We agile coaches help people dance with systems, and dancing to me is an art form. And you want, like, I mean, not all dancing or performance art that I see put in front of me is going to float my boat or ring my bells. But so it's not going to. And some of the stuff I see that's not going to float my boat is going to float other people's boats. It's going to be that random. It's going to be like, actually, we want to invite people in that are creative, that don't think like the rest of us, that can help us with the systems that we're trying to impose or that are imposed upon us, that are going to help us navigate through them gracefully. And like, okay, well, so actually I'll misquote this, but is one of my favorites, David Ogilvy. Dan, I'm looking at you. But one of his famous quotes is because he offered Ogilvy out as an agency, and one of their MOs was what they offered was people who organizations would never employ. So Ogilvy was about creating people that other people would never put on the payroll, but they'll pay you for a while because they want something different. They want you to help them dance differently, but they don't need you forever. And you don't need to be there forever. You just help people dance, and then they can dance, and then you go away because otherwise you're just a dancing partner. You're not a dance teacher, and then they'll just crack on dancing however they want to dance. And I think that's what we're after. We're not into rules. One of the things that really, I mean, I don't mean we're not into rules. I mean, like, we should be wary of rules because rules constrict you. And we want to break rules to see if it's beneficial or whatever. And my word, like speaking to Sanjiri's point, I think we do have to be wary of. There's a lot of people out there who some of them are probably exploiting the fact that there's a low barrier to entry.
For sure.
And some of them are actually even that, exploiting benevolently. Some are exploiting ambivalently, and some are exploiting malevolently.
Yeah, I mean that's such the reality. Yeah,
but that's okay. That's what we have to live with. That's the sort of like the tithe on it, the tax on it, and buyer beware, seller beware. What you're getting into when you contract with someone, but actually, ridding ourselves of that would probably rob ourselves of something as well. And I would say, a lot of the professions that exist, there are some complete charlatans in there, and they've gotten through the system.
Dermatologists. I mean, I'm sorry for any dermatologists watching this, but I had a doctor. I had a dermatologist who used to call themselves, we're the sort of the sort of deceptive lotions and potions, right? That's what he called it, but jokingly, tongue in cheek, right? But I totally agree. I think again, I think there's a natural. It's a very new profession, right? And again, it goes, if you look at the wave, the sort of rate of change we've gone through just in a lot of different things, especially things dealing with technology. And so agile coaches are very prevalent in the technology space because you're trying to bridge different worlds together to speak different languages around problems that are usually sort of have a common thread, which is tech, right? And so I feel like there's a huge rate of change that's happened just with our profession. I've seen it just in the last 5 years. And I've seen, at least in the French market, I've seen in other markets as well, I've seen there's been a natural weeding out process that's taken place because organizations who've now invested on their second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth cycle of coaching and transformations have a better understanding than they did 10 years ago. And so they know what to look for. They know what to be wary of. They know what they don't want. And again, and they know what they can expect, out of, what they should expect out of that, what they can't completely delegate to coaching. Because so there's a lot that goes on there. And there's some coaches who even do more than they really should that end up becoming
I think I think that goes to the analogy I made of finding a therapist, right? So experientially, like if you go and you're looking for a therapist for your first time, it can be daunting, and you find somebody and you figure it, and maybe it doesn't work, and maybe you luck out and you get the perfect person right away. But you eventually, through experience, you figure out what you need. This is very much like dating. What works for you? What are your, red flags? What are the things that work for you, don't work for you? You'll figure that out. I don't think that you need, I don't need a body out there being like, oh, Dan, what you need in a mate are these things. So go out and find these things, and this is what you should be looking for, and this is what will work for you. Well, how do you know? And how do you know what will work as a therapist for me? You don't know that. Now, I get that they're qualified as therapists, but I also, similarly, when you're talking about charlatans, I find that there are charlatans in that industry as well. I mean, it happens in every industry, right? Like you find, I mean, heck, the guy who I talked about last episode, who's helping me build some stuff out front, I don't think the guy has a degree to his name. He's just an artist and knows how to do masonry work. He doesn't have any kind of a license. I just pay the guy and he does good work. And I saw one good thing and I asked him to do other things. So I don't know. No one had to tell me that he was qualified. I hired another landscaper years ago and they were terrible. They screw everything they touched. I had to redo, and they cost a lot more than the person who did great work. So I don't know.
Which speaks to what is value, right? Obviously, when you take a piece of your budget in an organization, you have budget and you have these specific challenges before you, and you decide to say, okay, I have this conviction that an Agile coach is going to help me. What value are you expecting from that? I think that's the question a lot of people don't take the time to really ask themselves. And even us ourselves, how much of myself am I willing to contort to adapt to this context to help this person bring about the value that he's expecting? I think that's the honest conversation a lot of us don't have oftentimes when we jump in, because we got to pay bills. There's opportunities that may never come up again. There's all these different things in play that come about that really challenge you as to how you walk in and out of different contexts, as you carry on your journey as a coach or as a change agent, whatever. So me personally, I've shied away from calling myself an Agile coach. And that's because I see myself as something broader. Maybe it speaks to the journey that I feel like I'm on, right, to where I want to be in about 4 or 5 years. And I don't want that sort of epithet of Agile coach I don't want to be defined as just that. I don't want to be shoehorned into that. It's one of the things that I have experience doing. I'm very proud of it, right? I make no qualms about it. It pays my bills, and and I don't have any problem introducing myself as that when I walk into space. But I'd like to be known as more than that, and that's why the biggest test for us, think about it, is how do you break down to our auntie or a cousin or somebody who's totally not in the space at all? What the hell we do? They look at you like, what do you? You're a jack of all trades. So I think that's the beauty of it. I think it's also the things we should be wary of. And there's a quote by, what's his name in our cohort again? I keep forgetting his name, but he was basically saying, one of our mentors in the cohort we were just in, Kevin Callahan. So he said basically something to the effect of the true, paraphrasing, true essence, or really the strength of a coach, right, of what we do, is knowing your own limitations. And I believe that's the case with any leadership position. And what we do is kind of a leadership position.
I think he was quoting Harry Callahan there, wasn't he, out of Magnum Force?
Most likely. Could be. I don't think he's probably the first person that said that, but yeah.
A man's got to know his limitations. That was Dirty Harry's thing that he said in Magnum Force.
Yeah. There's nothing that
we're at the last minute.
Exactly.
We've got to.
That was my. You know what? That was my final. That was my outro.
I'm going to throw mine in, and it might be shorter than that. But based on what you've just said there, Sanjiri, that I've said to a couple of people that You know, am I an agile coach? And do agile coach, does it exist? You know, is it even a thing? The thing for me is that if I was in a crowded room, you know, and everyone was working, if someone shouted agile coach, I'd look round.
Yeah.
And if I was in a room and someone said to someone else, go and ask the agile coach, I half expect they'd wander up to me. But who am I? You know, what am I? I'd always go, all right, I'm Matt. Like, I am Matt. I'm going to be different from some of the other agile coaches. And like Dan said, like, oh man, I might be a pain in your ass, or I might be the best thing since sliced bread. Um, but and if I am the best thing since sliced bread, the other person who's a pain in your ass, we're still probably both agile coaches. The thing is, you should expect those different things off us. And I think that's all right. But I think essentially, like, I'm Matt, you're Sanjiri, he's Dan. We do that stuff. You'll get slightly different things off us. Probably the best thing to do is invite us all in. And it'll be mustard.
That's
But
it.
yeah, it must exist. It must exist because someone says it, like say, and we look round. And
Mm.
if someone was handed a stone in a crowded room and said, throw that at the agile coach, I'd be getting it on the back of the head. I know I would.
Mm.
So that's why it exists to me. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I do think that I do think it exists. Should it be a profession and certified? I don't think so. I mean, I've said a lot about what I think in terms of therapists, et cetera, but I guess one thing in closing that I'm thinking about hearing everything is um, something to keep in mind. I know that we want to have a topic at some point about like sort of the loneliness of coaching, but it strikes me that even in cases where, as an agile coach, I know I've been ejected by a system, I have heard tales after I'm gone from people still in it about positive effects I've had in the organization where people will be doing things I talked about or saying that they may not want to give me credit because they're like, we don't want to give credit to that a-hole, but they're doing it. And
Yeah.
so like you can get ejected from a system and still have an impact. And so understanding that the impact, even if there's it's not a match, um, that impact is something that can still happen. And that's not really germane to the topic, I guess, but it's just something I'm thinking on as I hear all the conversation in this today. So
No, I get that, and we do this a lot, don't we? We tie it back into previous episodes, and one we tie back into a lot is Teresa's, and we were talking about discomfort. And the thing
Yeah.
is, like you say, people don't people can associate discomfort with other people, and that's sometimes why it is enough to not want to give it credit. That person made me feel uncomfortable, but you needed to feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
So credit to that
yeah,
person for taking you through that, you know.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Which is yes, and I do want to take that subject up of the loneliness of the coach because that is one of the generators of the loneliness of the coach, where
Yeah, for sure. It's one of
people
the
feel
key.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and
So
actually that could be I don't know because I don't know all the people involved in all these conversations, but part of what's driving we need to define what an agile coach is because people are getting this thing that they're calling agile coaching and it's not what I do. And that's not agile coaching. And so I get thrown out because I do what an agile coach is supposed to do. And if everyone just knew that this is what an agile coach was, maybe I wouldn't get tossed out because they would know I'm supposed to do this stuff.
mm.
And I don't know if that's the reasoning, but it seems like there's a lot of like agile coaching is me and what I do, and what these other people do, like that's not coaching. And so we
Yeah.
need to define it so that what I do is coaching.
But and also agile coaching has gone beyond the agile manifesto. So a little bit, right? Because so
yeah,
you can
yeah.
totally do your job without mentioning or going across or having to hammer the agile manifesto in somebody's head. And so I think that's part of the tension, the friction that's there. So, kind of like with the Jollof Rice, Jollof Rice is only a part of the meal that has to interplay in terms of flavors and spices with all these other components.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man, I'm so glad you finished on the rice.
if you love our content, please like, follow, or subscribe. and help us Flâner some more.